Welcome back to our 78th episode of the Launch Your Farm Show, where I interview Lorne Cooper with eXp Realty and the host of the Real Estate Agent Advantage Show. In this episode, Lorne and I talk about why agents should be open to trying a few strategies before deciding what really works for them. And Lorne shares how newer agents can learn from others' mistakes to speed up the learning process and to avoid a lot of headaches, stress, and disappointment in the business. We also talk about what you can do to ensure you stick with your strategies long enough to test if they're worth continuing and how to decide if they aren't right for you. Lorne also shares a super easy way to generate a steady flow of referrals by focusing on building relationships with agents from out of town. And Lorne talks about how he challenged himself to prospect for a year and document his journey to help keep him accountable and provide value to other agents. Plus, we talk about a ton of other ideas that you can use to grow your geographic farm. So be sure to check out this episode, like and subscribe, and enjoy the episode with Lorne. Welcome back to another episode of the Launch Your Farm Show. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and today we've got a great guest. It's Lorne Cooper. Lorne is an agent with eXp Realty and the host of the Real Estate Agent Advantage Show. I've been a guest on it. We've got a number of awesome guests on it. You've got a great show going, and we're going to dive in today and talk about your experience with real estate farming and the things you've learned over the years. So Lorne, take a second, tell us a bit about yourself and why you're here.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate you having me on the show. We've known each other for a couple of years now, quite a few years now. So
yeah.
It's nice to talk in this format.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Lorne Cooper. I host a show called the Real Estate Agent Advantage. Why do I host a show called the Real Estate Agent Advantage on YouTube? Well, it's because I had a really crappy start to this business. It took me a long time to really figure it out. And just came down to throwing whatever I could on the wall and seeing what stuck. I didn't have the right kind of guidance and mentorship, so I was looking for anything and everything. By doing that, it was a long road.
Yeah.
I finally hit my success kind of around year 3. I've been in real estate for about 10 years now. And since then, I kind of come from a background of music and of teaching, and I just wanted to spare other realtors from the pain that I felt and not really knowing what to do. And so that's the whole impetus behind the show, sharing my experiences, my knowledge, and interviewing the top agents around North America, such as yourself, who have insight in specific topics and can share kind of their experience so people get a shortcut to their own success. That kind of sums it up.
That's awesome. It's a great example, great way to explain it, because it is valuable. If you've been through the business, if you've been long enough and you've struggled with it, you understand the struggles you've had, the struggles a lot of us have had, because a lot of times we see agents and think, oh, they're super successful. It must have just been so easy for them, or it was this simple process, or it was just this linear projection of how they got there. And the reality is that for most agents, it is a struggle. It is a grind. It is a really figuring out who you are, I find, and then also figuring out how you're going to do the business, and having that extra help and that support is key to really helping agents kind of speed that process up and not have to go through it on their own. And that's why I do what I do. And I know that's why you do what you do, to share and hopefully speed it up for agents who are willing to learn and kind of move ahead with it.
100%. And I found really in life, in everything. So I have a background in music. I love music and playing guitar and all that. And that was my life before real estate. Professional musician, owned a music school, yada, yada, yada. But I found that anybody that has things sort of naturally come to them very easily, they're amazing. And you see these people and they're like savants. They're just incredible. Yeah. But for them to teach you what they do is very difficult, because they don't really know. It just sort of comes automatically. Whereas if you find somebody who's found success through struggle and really trying to figure it out, again, through anything, athletics, musical instrument, real estate, they really know the difficulties and intricacies of every little detail and can explain it a little bit better, because it was difficult for them as well. It wasn't just automatic, like, how did I do that? No. I know my process. It went there, and then I finally figured it out. Exactly. So that's kind of what I find. And the other thing about my show and your show is that we bring on people that really are the experts. And we also kind of know the questions to ask, even the ones that it does come naturally to figure out those little tidbits that can help other people really, rather than just, I did 100 deals my first year.
Exactly.
And they all called me.
Yeah.
Wow. And that does happen. And that really pisses me off.
Exactly.
but you know what, good for them. But yeah, for the most of us, we have to figure it out. So there you go. Before we go any further, I grabbed my guitar. I came up with a little thing. So
Awesome.
when we started the show, Ryan's computer got a little frozen for a second. So I thought, what can I do for Ryan that's special? So I'm going to do a little song for Ryan. All right, so this is a G major. All right.
This is the first of its time.
Launch your farm. Ryan Smith, it's launch your farm.
That's great. That's awesome.
I kind of made it up on the spot for you, but there you go.
That's me. I've never had that on the show, so we could turn that into the main hook and the jingle for the show. That's awesome.
Well, let me do it again and actually tune the guitar next time. But yeah, there you go. I just wanted to do something a little different to stand out.
That's fun. That's great. So yeah, going back to what you were saying about that beginning part, and I think it's important. This is why I always start most of my shows with kind of going back to people's beginnings and where they came from, because I think that first few years is critical to really understanding how agents end up where they are and how they got there. Like you said, some agents come out of the gate, do 100 deals, and it's like, how the heck did they do that? But like we said, most agents aren't doing that. It's important for agents who are in that first few years to understand that they aren't alone. This is a very lonely business at times. It's very difficult. Like you said, there's not a lot of guidance at times. There's not a lot of resources for people to talk to. Most people don't have a best friend who's an agent who they could ask questions about. So understanding that those first few years is really helpful. So talk about your kind of first couple of years. You mentioned it took you a few years to kind of really crack that code. So what did it look like for you in that tough time or that struggle years?
Sure. Everybody grab some Kleenex. All right, here we go. So I'm glad I could laugh about it now because it was brutal at the time. So this is my journey in real estate. I got my license, and as I was transitioning, first let me explain why I got my license, and people are going to laugh their asses off on this. Okay, I was lying in bed watching TV with my wife, and we're flipping through the channels, and we see this ridiculous show, $1 Million Listing in LA, and I'm sorry, but some of these guys, they're like 19, 20 years old, and their grandmother is connected with like the kings of Bel Air. So they have these incredible, and I'm like, if these guys can make that much money being complete idiots, I'm sorry, or at least that's how they came off on the show. We know TV isn't necessarily reality, but then I can at least make a living. So let me try this. So I did it, got my license, and during that time I was shutting down my music school business. I was one of the first kind of online music schools, and it was fun, it was cool, but that's what I was doing my whole life, and it was time for me to do something a little bit different. So as I was doing that, I was kind of approached by this music retail company to kind of take, because I have experience in retail as well, and the selling of instruments and all that, and they wanted me to help them because they'd been turning a loss for 6 years in a row. So can you come and help us? And I thought, this is great. For a year I can help them out while I'm kind of getting my feet wet in real estate and getting my license, and then make that transition. Anyway, it didn't turn out that great in the end. I mean, it turned out great for this company because I got them a profit within 3 months. Wow. But as soon as I did that, they're like, okay, we don't need you anymore. So I'm like, all right, anybody who knows musical instruments, Fender guitars, like they couldn't get Fender guitars. I got the guys from Fender to fly up, like we made it happen. Anyway, long story short, they let me go within 3 months because I started turning a profit for them and they were paying me too much. And I was like, okay, now what the hell am I going to do? I've got my second kid on the way, literally like 2 months away. My wife wasn't working at the time because baby's about to pop. And we burned through our savings, man, like really, really quickly. So I went to my broker at the time. I was with Century 21, great company. But I was like, help me. I don't know what to do. Like really, and I need to make money. And she kind of pointed me in a direction here, there, everywhere. The usual stuff that people that used to be in the business, 20 or 30 years ago would say. And their intentions are great, but it's not always the best stuff. So I just started scrambling, and it really came down to me finally figuring out that I need to reach out to people outside of my market. I need to get connected. I need to try to, learn from everybody that I could possibly learn from. So I started going to these conferences within the area, and then slightly without, outside of my area, and networking with people outside of that, and trying to learn as much as I possibly could. And I'll tell you, my first year, I did everything. I did cold calling, I did door knocking, I tried farming, and trying farming is very dangerous, as you know,
Yes.
because it's very
Yeah.
expensive,
Yeah.
especially when in the beginning you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I tried everything, online social media stuff. And this was right around the time when social media was starting to get popular and people were like, oh, you don't need to do this, prospecting stuff. People will just sort of call you if you just
Yeah.
show up on social media. I'm like, okay, well, I guess people don't like me that much. um, so anyway, to summarize it, my first year was like 3 deals. It was 1 deal and 2 leases.
Mm.
It was brutal, brutal. We burned through our savings. It was really tough. And I was, I remember at my lowest moment, and this is the Kleenex box is ready, because we've all had these moments in our
Yeah.
lives, in real estate or not. I was knocking on doors, and it was like, it doesn't matter. Cold of winter, the heat of the summer, I was doing it. And this one particular door I knocked on, and this guy must have had a really, really bad day, because he opened the door, and I wasn't even asking if he wanted to sell his house. I was just sort of like updating him on what was happening in the neighborhood. And he slammed the door in my face, slammed it like to the point where he broke the frame and it bounced back open. And all I could do was, well, that wasn't very nice. And he
Yeah.
slammed it again. And I honestly, I walked back to my car, and I was just defeated, because this was after already door knocking for hours, and tears were shed. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do? Gathered myself up, and the next year I thought, no matter what it is, if I can at least get 10 transactions next year, I know I'm moving in the right direction.
Mm.
I managed to get, I think it was like between 10 and 12, where it was 3 deals and the rest were leases, I think. And but it was proof of concept that I could at least kind of figure it out. And through that time I was figuring it all out, and traveling and trying to meet people and learn from them. So by year 3 it hit. I went from, I guess year 1 I made like $12,000 or $12,500. Like, that's brutal. Year 2 was like 36, which was in the right direction. You can't live off it, but it was in the right direction. And then by year 3, I hit around 180 something, and then I was like, okay, huge jump. I'm moving in the right direction. Let's do this. And since then it's been great, and I've enjoyed sharing my experiences with everybody else. And I want to say, and you and I know this very well, especially within the same office sometimes, this industry is set up to be a very competitive industry. So people don't necessarily want to share with you. They could pretend to. Some people are genuine, some people are not. We all know that. But I'd rather it be a collaborative industry. And that's why even within my offices, when I was with Century 21 or when I was with Remax, and now with EXP, I love collaborating and sharing. I'm an open book. So if anybody ever has any questions, reach out to me anytime. And that's why we're having this conversation. I hope it can help some people.
Exactly. And I want to dive into that story, because it's very similar to, again, a lot of agents that struggle that first year, where most people tend to give up. And we've probably all heard similar stats where it's like 40% of people are gone in the first year, 60% are gone by year 2, and 90% are gone by year 5, because a lot of agents, through no fault of their own, just aren't prepared and don't understand what the business is about. They don't understand what it takes to get through that. They also don't understand the time that you need to grow the skills, to make the connections. And like you said, you were looking for that linear growth where it was moving forward. That's important. But for a lot of agents, they would have given up. They would have burned through their savings. Their wife would have been screaming at them. They may have been second guessing themselves. They may not have stuck with it. And I find that it's very parallel to how you run a farm as well, in that it takes time. And so many people fail as a whole in the business, but also when it comes to farming, in that there's a time commitment, there's a learning curve, there's a pushing through these things that you have to do with it. And most people fail at farming because they give up way too soon. They aren't prepared to go to battle, and they aren't prepared to have the crap that happens with it. But once you get through that and you make it out of that, I was just having a conversation the other day about it's like getting into orbit in space. Most of the energy takes it to get the rocket launched. Once you're in space, you're cruising. And it's the same with this business, and the same with a lot of things in life. That initial part, that initial blast off is really what takes your energy. But once you get through it, it becomes a lot easier. And I know for you, obviously, from that year 3 on, has become easier. Obviously, we have ups and downs. We have times where we're still wondering what the hell we're doing in this business, but it is very parallel to the farm, because really a farm is a form of real estate business. It's just a different way of doing it. So for you, obviously you started farming. I know you've been putting farming into your business over the last few years. What did that look like for you? And why did you decide to make that jump and put that as part of how you run your business?
So initially, it's just a matter of seeing, in any market, you're going to see those people that are super hyper successful, that have an established business and have been there for a long time. And it's difficult. I tried to learn from, what are they doing, right? Who are they using for their website provider? What are they doing?
Mm,
What kind of pieces am I getting in the mail? And you're seeing people, you're not seeing the whole picture. So
yeah.
so what you're seeing is, a representation, and you try to pull from that. And that's kind of what I did. I saw these big names in my area doing certain things, so I just sort of tried to replicate that.
Mm,
And it didn't really work that well for me in the beginning. And like you said, especially with geographic farming and with real estate, it's very expensive. It's an
yeah.
expensive thing to experiment with. So you need to be prepared. You need to plan a budget. You need to basically follow your course and have people plug, but true, and plan it out and really know what you're doing getting into it, rather than just sort of throwing things here and there. Because guess what? All of us see things in the mail from a realtor one or two times and it disappears,
Yep.
or for a stretch of like 2-3 months and it disappears. What a waste of time and money for that person, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And like you said, you don't see the whole picture. And I find that's the mistake that a lot of agents make, is they look at these big agents, these mega agents, and they go, okay, they're successful. So what are they doing that you said, like you said, you can see, but you're not seeing what you can't see. And generally, in my experience, what got them to be successful is generally not the things they're doing right now. And
Right.
I was use billboards as an example. Agents will see big agents with billboards. And I would say most agents didn't get big and didn't grow their business with billboards. They got
Right.
that way doing lead generation through farming, through marketing, through cold calling, through all these different things. And then in order to keep that going, they then invest in billboards or park benches and these kind of things. And generally speaking, those things are not what got them there. And if you went back and tracked, very few agents started in the business going, hey, I'm just going to throw up 1,000 billboards in my area, and then just became successful overnight. So it's
Right.
working it backwards and say, okay, how did they start down here and how do they get there? And what do I need to do? You can speed it up. You can do things to
Yeah,
bring that up, but you have to know how they got there instead of just saying, where are they right now? And I think that's a
that's
key
right.
part of it.
And having shows like this, where you can tap into somebody's experience and really find out, okay,
Yep.
this person's doing 300 deals a year with him and his team. How did they get there? So it's not just, here I am now. It's, this was my first year, second year, third
Yep.
year, fourth year. This is what I did at each time. Really being able to dig in, like something like this is invaluable to people, I find, which is why I also want to present this type of information,
Yep.
and do that, because you can get that insight. I also think that, you know, this business, it can be really scary. And you had mentioned, a couple minutes ago, people fail at a really high rate, and they give up easily. And for me, it was a matter of desperation.
Mm,
I was in a desperate, dire circumstance, and I didn't know what else to do.
yeah.
And so I knew that it was all on me. And you can either fall or soar, and I
Yep.
just decided to keep pushing through all the crap until I got to the point where I started to fly. But you have to have that perseverance, and it helps if you have some sort of mentorship or something. I didn't
Yes.
have that, but it
Yeah.
helps if you have that.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. And I think agents should be joining teams more than they think they shouldn't. Then when agents are getting started, joining a team can be huge. And I always say it's not just to learn what to do, it's to learn what not to do. And that can help, because you can go down a rabbit hole of all these ideas that you think are amazing, all these things that you think are going to be incredible because you came up with this concept. And it's like, if you've
Right.
never tried it, if you don't know what you're doing, you can waste a lot of time designing a postcard or designing a new business post or something. And it's like, if you haven't tested, if you haven't tried it before, you got to make sure you're using it. And that saying what not to do can be helpful. And I think also what you mentioned earlier was about your savings. And I think that's a big part. A lot of people get into it. People are told, like, you got to have a good amount of savings to get in this business. And for me, I can only speak to my own experience and agents I've spoken with. That was always my biggest crutch. And I fell back on, I had a good chunk of savings. I finished school, came out, and I had a decent amount of savings set aside. And I relied on that as a safety net. And it wasn't until that safety net got pulled out, because I was blowing through my safety net, until I hit that desperation, like you said. You're just like,
Right.
Frank, what do I got? Like, I got to do something. I got to change, because this last year this is my first year, I did a few deals, and it's like, I can't live off of a few deals a year. I got to shift gears. And then I find that carpet that gets pulled up from underneath you is the make it or break it moment for a lot of agents like yourself, where it's like, okay, I gotta shift what I'm doing, refocus on what's working, what's not working, and that can be the difference between taking off, like you said, soaring or falling over.
The other thing, and then we can move on, but the other thing about this is that's very challenging about this business is that everything works. Everything. We've seen
Yep.
people literally, basically doing things as dumb as shouting, I'm in real estate, I'm in real estate
Yeah.
on the corner,
Yeah.
okay? And them getting business
Yeah.
and everything in between.
Yeah.
But at the same time, nothing works.
Yeah.
Meaning if it's not congruent with who you are
Yeah.
and you're not willing to do it consistently and persistently and create a system around it, it's not going to work. So you have to find what works for you through a little
100%.
bit of trial and error and hopefully some guidance.
Yep.
And then you'll really be able to find your success. And if you have that mentorship, it helps because they can really help you say, okay, I know you're not getting the results yet, but trust me,
Yeah.
stick with it because you are so close. And you sometimes you need to rely on that because that inner voice,
Yep.
will bring you down sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's perseverance, sticking it through long enough and is a tricky point, because sometimes it's like, hey, you're going down a path that you probably shouldn't be and you're persevering in the wrong direction, and you need someone to say, hey, this may not be a good thing. Now, they're not always right, but there's, if you've got enough wisdom and experience in the business, you can guide someone that way. But it's also, like you said, the opposite, where you may need to tell them, hey, just keep pushing, you're almost there. And I've seen that with so many agents. Like, if you just stick with it another month or two doing what you're doing, you'll see those results. And a lot of people on my show, the same thing, where like they're about to give up, they were trying farming, they're getting it, and then it's like that first deal, it's like, okay, that gave them that edge, that or they got hooked on it. Sometimes you just got to get through that little blip, and then once you get through it, you can really start taking off.
It just as we're speaking, it reminds me of the fitness industry and the nutrition industry and people trying to lose weight, and it all works. It all works.
Yeah.
And none of it works depending on
Yeah.
who you are. And if you say it's the exact same thing, ultimately it's calories in versus calories out.
Yeah.
You need some guidance, stick with it or don't. You're hitting a plateau or you're not, you're going there. You need some guidance sometimes, but it's the same thing. It just struck me right now. So if you're confused, don't worry. Pretty much everybody is, or at least was at some
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
And you'll eventually find your path.
So speaking of your path, I want to dive into that a bit more too, because when you started doing things 10 years ago, you've adapted, you've changed what you did back then, probably maybe a resemblance of what you're doing now, but what did you start with doing and what did you evolve and how did you change your business over the years?
Sure. So I think what helped me again was reaching out and thinking of it rather than a competitive business to try to make it a collaborative one. And not everyone's going to reciprocate that way, but you and I do, and many other people that we know do. So if I would suggest, there's a neglected part of real estate that a lot of people don't really take into account, and that is agent to agent referrals.
Mhm.
So if you reach out of your area and start to create relationships and join masterminds, or you're a part of different organizations or companies that promote that type of thing, then you have that benefit where, number one, you can learn from other people in other areas. They're definitely more willing to share because you're not a competitor
Yep.
at all with them.
Yep.
And you're creating a relationship, whereas they know that they can trust you going forward if they have a client that's going to be moving to your area. So
Yep.
I think that's a really easy way. Simple way.
Yeah.
Nothing's easy, but it can be simple, but not necessarily easy. Simple way to start to build some confidence by learning from others and by creating a network of referrals.
Yeah. And that's how we met too. And that, I know we were friends on Facebook and I heard your name, but then we connected online and we chatted a bit here and there. And then I remember seeing your name pop up and people were referring you, and I remembered who you were. And then we got invited to a networking event, a private exclusive networking event. You and I met, we had dinner together, chatted more. And then it wasn't until we had that relationship where I'm like, okay, Lorne's a cool guy. I like him. He's interesting. And then I see someone else asking for your area and then I refer you and vice versa. Those personal interactions can be massive and can be huge for your business, but you have to be willing to put the time in. And like you said, it takes time, and it's simple, but it's not easy to consistently do that and then stay top of mind and then be able to add value to those agents. But if you do it right, there's agents who have done mind-blowing businesses with just agent-to-agent referrals. And that's all they do.
Yeah, you and I know quite a few of them that do a ton of that business.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, being confident enough in yourself to just go out there and introduce yourself to people. Listen, if you're shy, you're in the wrong business as far
Yep.
as I'm concerned. But go ahead and introduce yourself to the right people, and you're good to go. That's one step. So you asked about my path. Because I was so desperately in search of the answers, I went out and I met a ton of people. I tried coaching, and coaching can be very expensive. And I've done coaching with several different companies throughout my experience in real estate.
Yep.
And I'm not going to put anybody up or down, but I'll say that some are better than others. And
Yes.
it's
Yes.
difficult when you don't really know what to look for. See, in the
Yeah.
beginning, I don't remember, it's like the quadrant or whatever of knowledge, where you don't know what you don't know in the
Yep.
beginning. So you don't even know what you don't know.
Yep.
And that's the challenge. But once you get past that, you know what you don't know, like you know what exists out there,
Yep.
and you really have no idea how to do it, but you know how to like go after the knowledge for it. At that point, that's when you start to have a clue, and when you can kind of venture towards coaching or mentorship or
Yep.
something like that, once you have some money. But it can be very expensive, and it can be a waste of money too if you're not ready and you don't have clear,
Yes.
precise
100%.
goals, because different companies have different expertise. Look, you, for example, your expertise is geographic farming.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not going to go to you for cold calling.
Exactly.
I'm going to you for geographic farming.
Exactly. Yep.
So you need to know what your specific goals are before you go down that path. And I know that was a bit of a tangent, but I know that it can be a bit of a hot topic. And so I just wanted to throw that out there because I tried it. So again, my path to success: number one, networking; number two, consistent prospecting.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been up and down with prospecting because it's the thing, again, you don't know what you don't know. Once you start to get busy, you're like, okay, well, I've got to service what I've got going on, and it takes away from the prospecting, and then you've got the gap again, right?
Yeah.
So you have to learn through experience that no, you can't do that. You have to keep it consistent. It took me a long time to figure that out. Right?
Yeah.
So
and you can be told that 1,000 times.
Yeah.
It's not until you go through that cycle enough times, the ups and downs, going, all right, I got to adjust something, because I mean, we've all heard it. Prospect 3 hours a day, consistent, do it in the mornings.
Sure.
It's like, okay, you got to hear it. But once you go through that, you really got to feel it, because everyone thinks they're different. Oh, I can handle prospecting for a couple of weeks and then take a month off and do it. But yeah, if we end up in that cycle over and over and over again.
Exactly. So you have to be consistent at whatever it is you decide to do. For me, I was door knocking a lot back then. So that's what I did. I had a farm area that I chose that was about 635 houses, so it wasn't too big.
Yep.
Well, initially it was about 1,700, and then I shrunk it down to 635, thinking I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond, right? Because it's impossible to compete with these people that are doing hundreds of deals a year and these huge budgets. I have such a small budget at the time. I'd rather put out the output more consistently in that small area and make it look and seem like I'm as big as everybody else to these small group of people.
Yep.
So that's when things finally started to work out. I was door knocking that neighborhood a lot. I was networking and taking care of referrals, and that's what got me started. And then I went into, online leads and different paths that we can talk about, but that's really what got me off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's, like you said, you have to go through those trial and errors. You have to try things, and you can get into one strategy or one approach and it can work for you, but things can shift and things can adjust, or you may not be getting as much as you can from it, or you may not be as efficient. So it's a delicate balance in trying to find how much and what do I do without giving up on something, but still sticking with it, having that stick with itness to continue what you're doing, but also still evolving and adapting. And I find there's a lot of agents who been in the business 20, 30 years. What worked for them 20, 30 years ago, they did, and then they had a great success, and then it's starting to go like this. And I've had people come through my own programs and who 30 years in the business going, what the hell? Like, this worked amazing. It doesn't work anymore when I'm doing farming. It's like, right, you have to adapt, you have to evolve. And for you, obviously, you were willing to try new things, put yourself out there, take risks. You're willing to try things until you figure out kind of what works for you, like you said, and what works for your budget and works for your time, and then making it all work together. And that's really the key, is how do you tie those things together to really make it kind of function?
Exactly. And I had a really tough time. There were, in my first 2 years in that span, there were moments where I had opportunities, and I work in a market where it's really cutthroat. I mean, I know real estate is ultra competitive everywhere.
Yeah.
But I am super saturated where I am right now. Multiple cultures, everything, different ways of doing business, and it's like cut rate discount, this, that, everything else. And I had a couple opportunities that just sort of slipped through my fingers because I wasn't willing to lose my integrity of what my own value was. And
Yep.
so I lost. Maybe that was stupid. Maybe it was. I don't know. I'm not saying I have all the answers. I never claim that, but I just knew that I was worth more than what these people saw me as. So
Yep.
I was willing to walk away from that and try to find something else. Again, maybe that was stupid. I don't know. Integrity. Who needs it, right?
And I think again, I've seen your career over the last few years, and you have evolved. You've worked with what worked, and you've stuck with what works for you, and you've then been willing to try new things. What's something that you've done that you thought was going to be a massive hit and fell flat on your face, or if you had any?
Honestly, about 80% of what I've tried in 10 years has been crap, and 20% has worked out. And that's what it is in everything, though. I mean, when you look at Elon Musk or you look at anybody, their track record is like 80% failure, 20% success.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be exactly that ratio, but it's in and around, right?
Yep.
What have I tried? So I was told it's a lot, right? So I have to think about it. So along the networking lines, I was told, become a part of the community. I was new in the community as well. And the thing that I didn't understand was database. Number one, just to be blatantly honest, everybody says I had a crappy database. I'm coming from a musical background. A lot of musicians don't have money. They can't buy a house. All right. We're not talking about, like Kanye West here, who, if he's a musician or not, I'm not going to say.
Yeah, that's a different show.
Yeah, exactly. Slash, how's that? But you know what I'm saying? Like, it just wasn't working out for me. Friends and family didn't really use me. And maybe that's because for you and anybody, the general you, they're probably thinking about you the way they knew you when you were, a teenager.
Yep.
And none of us were great as teenagers.
Yeah.
So you really have to prove yourself. And for me, that was definitely the case before my friends and family started to see me in that type of light.
Yeah.
And, so I basically had to blaze my own trail. But knowing what I know now, going backwards, database is extremely important, and being able to hit them consistently and with value, that will prove your worth to them and then get you more business and foster that going forward. So everybody, number one, everyone used to say it, and I would always just push it off because I knew mine was crap. Yeah. But having said that, you never know who knows somebody else, right? Yep. And I've gotten, referrals from musicians who themselves couldn't do anything, but they knew somebody who was doing something like, oh, you got to use my friend Lorne.
Yep.
So there you go. And it doesn't matter if they live in your area or not, because you can always refer them out. So database is number one. Then going beyond that, I went into, like I said, door knocking and networking with other realtors, but they said, become a part of the community, right? New community. So I joined the Chamber of Commerce. I spent a lot of time there on the board, volunteering. I got maybe a handful, not a lot, a little bit from there, but that started to become the popular thing where all the realtors were kind of going to, right? Yeah. So, if you have the stronger relationships and they're more authentic, then great. I tried to come at it from a place of value, where what can I do to help you grow your business?
Right.
And the biggest mistake that I made, honestly, was not one particular thing. It was not being consistent and building a system around everything.
Right. Yep. That's key.
I'm a creative person. I like trying things and this and that. And, and I'm not the most organized, systematic person, even though when I sit down and really pull things apart, I can be. But on an ongoing basis, I'm not that guy. So that was my biggest mistake, was not building the right systems around all the different funnels that I was building to draw as much as I could from them.
Yeah, that's a key part of where a lot of agents struggle. And a lot of people have great ideas. They got a lot of things they would like to do. And that's where, you try it out, but it is putting it into a system and creating something that is replicatable and duplicatable, and that you can do it consistently to really get the most out of it. You may get a few deals here and there. I've tried so many things. You and I are similar in a lot of ideas on how we create things. And it's like, you gotta be committed to seeing it through, to systematizing it and past just the creative part. And you'll get deals, you'll get business, but are you going to get the most amount of deals? You're going to get the most amount of business if you don't systematize it. You may luck out and you find that 20%, but to take it and get it more likely to be one of the 20% things, it's you got to have a system behind it. So I think that's good advice, because a lot of agents try things but don't fully put it together. And if they do that, take a little bit of that extra time, just a little bit extra steps to make sure that it's a system. And I think, like you said, the database is key. And that's something I learned. Same thing where it's like, yeah, I got a database. I got a spreadsheet of people, or I got my phone, or I got whatever. And you have to use a database. And it wasn't until the last few years of my business, where in like the last 5 years, where it's like, man, the money you lose by not having a database far outweighs the money you gain by not keeping one. And it's so invaluable to do that.
Absolutely. And the other thing that comes to mind that I really screwed up at is people, there's the sexy stuff, the cool stuff that people are talking about. Literally, like we touched on a little bit earlier, Facebook, just post on Facebook, do this, do that. And you see these people getting business, and they're cool people, and they're great. But for me, it was like trying to put, a square peg in a round hole. I'm not the guy to write the blogs, and I'm not, I'll do video, which I finally figured out or am figuring out, but I'm not that guy. So I just, there's a sect of real estate out there. We get these ads. I'm sure you've seen it. Are you still door knocking and cold calling like it's 1984? Blah, blah, blah. Listen, I'm sorry. I don't put anything down. Well, I'll put one thing down, and I'll get to that in a minute. But everything works. We talked about that. Everything works. It's just, are you willing to work at it and do it consistently and create a system around it? Because guess what? Even if you're doing something, let's pick something very random, let's go back to something simple like door knocking. You're doing door knocking. If you're knocking on a door and you're getting somebody's number or email address to follow up, and you don't follow up, nothing's ever going to happen, dude.
Exactly.
Sorry. Exactly. You have to have a system of follow up.
Yep.
The fortune is in the follow-up. People say that for a reason.
Yep.
It is the truth. And that's the whole purpose and point of these systems in geographic farming and anything. If you don't have a system to follow up, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, you're wasting everything.
Yep.
Please invest in some sort of system of follow-up. Otherwise, it is a complete waste of your effort and time.
Yeah, 100%. That, again, for a lot of agents, is painful to have to do that, to systematize it.
Brutal.
But if you want to do it and you want to see the results, you have to, whether you hire someone to do that, whether you get a coach or a mentor, whether you have a company that does it, whether it's a third-party system, whether it's a technology you're using, whether it's just jotting down a system and just step 1, 2, 3, and I just repeat it. Creating that repeatable system is going to be important. And then I think too, and I think you'd agree with me, is that then it's being open and honest enough to look at that system and go, where are the flaws and where do I need to work on it? Because that's where a lot of agents, they got an idea and it's like, okay, what's not working though? How do we tweak that? And then also, is it worth fixing? Because some things you can spend a lot of time on fixing something that isn't worth fixing. And
this is the most challenging thing. It's the most challenging thing, is figuring out, have I spent enough time at this to really have the data to know if it's working or not?
Yeah.
And then can I tweak it, or should I stick with it? That's the challenge. So if you have the relationships that you can bounce off of, like, hey, I know you've been doing this over there. How's that working for you? What was the timeline? It really helps to shorten that learning curve, because it can be very, very challenging trying to figure out, have you given it enough time? Because you could be right there and you just don't know.
Exactly. Like that 6 feet from gold, I think this book called, or 4 feet from gold, or whatever it's called, where you're just almost at the cusp of getting through, and it's like the treasure's right there. You just got to keep pushing through.
Yeah, exactly. Or no, you've got time to move on. That for me, still to this day, is the most challenging part of this business, is figuring out when you've put in enough time at something and really realizing this is a go or this is not.
Yeah, exactly. So on the flip side, then what have you found has worked that you may not have expected, or that were like, hey, this really has taken off bigger than I thought that you've done?
Sure. Dancing on TikTok really works for me. No, I'm just
that's surprising.
That was the one thing I was going to say that I will make fun of some people for. And it's not fair, because some people make incredible livings off of doing the stupidest shit, I'm sorry, on TikTok. And for me personally, maybe I'm just an old fart, because I'm 43 now and it's just past me. But some idiot dancing and pointing to letters and words, lip syncing, I'm not going to sell my house with that person.
Yeah.
Being a realtor or not, coming at it from a different perspective, an outside perspective, I'm like, why the hell would I give my most trusted asset to this dancing fool? However, Having said that, all the respect in the world to the people that do make it work, because I know some
Yep.
people do a killing with it
Yep.
and do much more business than I'll ever dream of. So good for you guys. It's not for me.
Yep.
And that's okay. You have to
Exactly.
be able to see what is your lane, figure that out and go with it.
Exactly.
So I don't remember what the hell. Oh yeah, what actually worked?
Yes.
Not TikTok.
Yes.
Okay. So what worked for me was the networking number one in terms of learning and masterminding and getting actual
Mhm.
business from it. So that did absolutely work for me. What else worked for me was not much else. No, prospecting on a regular basis. Okay, and this year on my channel, I have this challenge. I've never done cold calling on a regular basis.
Mhm.
'Cause people, again, you feel uncool if you say that you do it. However, I know people that do a ridiculous amount of business from that.
Yep.
Ridiculous. And they're not salesy about it at all. It's fairly passive. They're coming from a place of value. I thought, you know what? Let's give it a shot. Let's put it out there for everyone to see. Like I said, I've done cold calling in the past, just not
Yep.
consistently. I've door knocked this and that, but for cold calling, it's an easy thing. So I dedicated 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'm cold calling, and I'm cold calling my geographic farm area, and
Yep.
slightly more, because you run out of numbers pretty quickly if you
Yeah.
follow the
Yes.
rules, people, and
Yeah.
don't call the do not call list,
Yeah.
which I do, but that's a whole other story. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I'm every Friday. So I put out videos 3 days a week. Mondays is interviews, Wednesdays is sort of like tips and tricks and whatever. And then Wednesdays is the prospecting challenge. And I talk about what my experience, what my numbers are for the
Awesome.
week, and what you can expect. And I dedicated a year to this. Now, do I expect perfection? No, because nothing is perfect. People get
Yep.
sick, kids get sick, whatever. But I'm committed to 100% doing it so that people can see, is it worth their time? Are they
Yeah,
willing to
exactly.
put forth the effort? Because with anything, as you know, whether it's farming is time and money.
Yep.
And it can be done without it, but generally speaking, it's time and money. Door knocking, time, like all that. It's anything is daunting before you start it, and you're like,
Yep.
is this really worth my time? So I wanted to do an experiment for everybody to see, and just lay it out there and say, these are the numbers that I got from it. These are my results. So you can decide if it's worth it for you or not.
That's
I thought
awesome.
it would be kind of a cool thing to put out there for people.
And that is for a lot of agents, because again, it's that we look at the successes that people have, and usually you either hear about the massive failures in cold calling or prospecting, or the wild successes, and you
Right.
don't hear about the journey in between. You don't hear about you get the trainer saying just make the calls, you get the person saying I'm never making an effing call again because it was terrible, and you don't get the in between. So your videos are a great example of that, of saying like, hey, here's the struggles, here's the real thing, here's what I'm doing, here's what I didn't do, here's what I should have done, here's what worked well, and here's what didn't work. And
Exactly.
that can help agents, I think, a lot more than just saying, did you make your calls, or don't do your calls because they suck. And walking people through
Exactly.
that can help. And I think also for you, if you agree, it's an accountability thing for yourself as well. So by putting it
Sure.
out there and agreeing to that, now you don't want to disappoint people that are following you, and you don't want to let people down. It's easier, and it's a free coach. You don't have to pay for coaching to have someone hold you accountable. You now have the people following your videos, making sure that you did what you said you were going to do, which I'm sure helps keep you
Yeah.
accountable.
Yeah, and everybody in the comments saying you suck.
Yeah.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So yeah, no, I enjoy that, and it definitely does hold me accountable, because I'm honest. And when if I miss a session, like I think it was last Friday, I had clients coming in from out of town
Mm,
that I had to show homes to, and I couldn't. I normally tell people I will not show in the morning because that's when I do my calls. That's it. However, I couldn't adjust their schedule. They're traveling in from out of town.
yep.
So I had to show them places in the morning. So I told people I did not make calls today. Like, I'm going to be honest. If I screw up, I'm a human being. I'm not perfect, but
Yep.
I'll let people know. I'm not going to just put on some facade and be like,
Yep.
"Ooh, millions of deals are falling from the sky." No, I want this to be an honest
Yep.
thing that people can learn from.
That's awesome. So obviously you're evolving, you're always evolving, you're changing things. What do you see next over the next year or two for you and your business? On what are you keeping the same, and what are you working towards?
Well, as you know, I've got my farm, and I experimented with a different farm last year that didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. And that's another example of, like, did you do what you needed to do? Did you give it enough time?
Hmm.
I definitely gave it enough time and budget. I made sure I set that aside, and it just wasn't necessarily the right area. Regarding farming, I have a question for you, and then we'll come back to this,
Sure. Yeah.
this topic. So I find, when people choose their farm, everyone's told, You look at the turnover rate, look at the trends, because the turnover rate isn't always everything. Look at, maybe it's a neighborhood that's trending because people are, downsizing or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
But I think people also have to take into account demographics.
And to add to that too is a lot of things like age and interests and your experience
Yes.
level as well makes a big part of it. Like there's an area in Burlington where I was predominantly working, and it was a lot of people there were like had been there for 50 years. So like the majority of the people were really old senior citizens who were living in these little bungalows who hadn't moved. And if you get someone who's 25 coming in doing TikTok dances, you're not going to connect with an 80-year-old in a bungalow that don't even know what the internet is, never mind TikTok is. So you have to
Right.
really match the strategies and the audience and who you're trying to serve and what you can bring as far as value goes. And I think that's where it comes down to is the value you bring. Does it line up with who you're trying to serve? And if you can bring that value and you can bring it, great. If you think your value would be better suited for another area, then you can line up and say, okay, what do I bring to the table? Like you said, what can I do? And is that going to align and be a good fit? And if it's not, then that may not be a good farm for you. And that's okay.
Yeah, it's just something to keep in mind, going forward. So what I'm doing, and that leads into kind of what I'm doing, is with my farm, I've evolved the messaging. Me, I try to be. I don't know if people can tell I'm pretty shy and quiet, but
Yeah.
I like to be fun, and I like to have a good time and show my personality and things. And I'm thinking, and this may or may not work out, but it'll throw people away. It'll bounce people off that don't want to be involved with me anyway. And
Yep.
it's better to be a filter up front than to find out later on. And it'll attract people that are attracted to that kind of playfulness, right?
Yep.
So I can show you some examples, but it'll probably look like crap because I've got that digital background up. Oh no, it's looking.
Nice.
So looking for a top quality real estate, like stuff like that is just fun. Okay. And then I've got a testimonial here, like a Google review,
Yep.
just as proof of value. So it's not just jokes. It's like, this
Yep.
guy
Yep.
is good. Then on the other side is my branding. Oh, look, it's actually coming out okay on the screen. So it's always consistent on one side where I have the branding and then I have something else on the other side. I'd like to have fun with the other side. Having said that, once a month I do specific, data. But at the other time I do not Joe average realtor, like I'll try to have fun with it because otherwise I get bored.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do? I don't know. I'm just doing me, and we'll see. So far it's okay.
And that's important too. And again, I would say do something you're going to stick with and be committed to. And if you hate it, then we talk about budget, your time and money. And I always say there's the energy budget too. And if you hate what you're doing and you don't like it and it zaps your energy, you're not going to stick with it. You're not going to stick with it long term. So if you're having fun and you're a fun person, you like to do those kind of things. If you're a keep it simple system, I know, like I had Ryan Hodge on, and he talked about postcards. He sends the exact same postcard month after month after month after month after month after month. That works for him. That's a system he wants to use and follow because that works for him. For someone like you obviously have that more fun, exciting, and you're willing to take risks and try different things. That works for you. If you had to do the other one, you probably wouldn't be as excited about it. You wouldn't be as committed.
I'd probably be more successful, but less excited.
There you go. So
Ryan's awesome, by the way. Ryan is fantastic. Ryan is one of those guys that I reached out to early on. I heard him on a podcast or something, and he did like 100 deals his first year. He's that guy. Yeah. And I'm like, oh man, how the hell did he do it? So I reached out to him, and he was totally cool, and we're not in the same market. So that's another example of, a really great person. There are a lot of great people in this industry. Just don't be afraid to reach out.
Exactly. That's very true. So that perfectly ties into the next segment, which is our best piece of advice. So if you were giving advice to agents who are thinking about getting into farming, or kind of being themselves, being authentic, what would you give as far as advice for them?
Go to medical school instead.
Exactly.
No, farming. No, obviously, listen, I don't want to sound like I'm sort of, kissing up, but you've got a great system that you built. And I was sort of the guinea pig along with a special group of people to sort of test it out. And it's a fantastic system. The one thing that I'll say is it can be very overwhelming because there's so much of it. There's so much that you can do with a farm. These days, digitally and physically, and be how involved you want to be. Make sure that you are able, or maybe have some help, have an assistant, but even by yourself, figure out what it is you're willing to do to create that complete plan. Right. With anything, the system always wins. I've
Yeah.
always learned that, and I suck at systems, and that's why I'm telling you, you need to just give in
Yeah.
and learn it, or take it from somebody else and just manipulate it to make it work for you. But systems are king with everything, with database, with farming, with calling, with online leads. It does not matter. Systems are king. So the number one piece of advice I can give people is find the right system around the 2 or 3 pillars of business that you want to go after. To back it up a little bit, do one pillar at a time.
Yes,
uh,
100%.
I would say database is automatic, so don't count that as like a one at a time. Database plus one, okay?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever that is, and then build the systems around it to a point where it's starting to go, it's starting to move like a machine and develop momentum, and then you can start to add other things. Don't do too many things at once,
Yep.
because none of it will work.
Yep.
You really have to set your focus at that one thing at a time, and then add it as you start to get the results that you want. Then add something else in. So systems, and don't take on too much at once.
Yeah, it's great advice, and it's personal experience and learned experience and wisdom that's passed on. And if you take it to heart and you follow, it will absolutely benefit everyone who does that, because that system is going to make a difference, and that focus will keep you on track and making sure you're doing the right thing. So that's awesome. So we always wrap up with your best book. So what's one book that you would recommend that's had an impact in your life, or you think would have an impact on our viewers?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a few, if that's okay.
Sure.
The book that I enjoyed the most in the last year was Will Smith's autobiography. I don't know if you had a chance
I've
to
heard good
read
things
it
about
or
it.
listen to it. It is fantastic, and I'm not, a big celebrity, lover, follower, whatever. I mean, Will Smith is cool enough, whatever. But the point is that he's developed, a system for success for himself, and it's a really introspective ride. For example, and I don't want to put anybody down because I'm a big fan of his work, but Matthew McConaughey, cool dude,
Yep.
like watching him in movies. His autobiography, and as far as I'm concerned, was kind of like empty trash. Okay, there was no depth to it.
Yeah.
Whereas Will Smith's was really insightful in terms of life lessons that you can apply, and he's coming at it from that perspective. Like, I wish I would have learned this earlier,
Right.
or this is what I took from that, or this is how I got successful at this because my mindset was such and such.
Yep.
It's really interesting, and I would definitely suggest people check that out. I don't get any money off it, obviously. I don't know him, but I'm just saying it's a great book. Now, a couple others real quick. Tim Grover, the trainer from Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Again, I'm not, I like sports, but I'm not like a huge sports nut. It's just that his latest book, what is it? Winning? Is that what it's called? I think it's called Winning. Tim Grover's latest book was amazing to see the insight from, being able to be daily with Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, like the highest competitors, people that can achieve at such a high level, and understanding their mindset about everything was incredible, absolutely incredible. And then the one that I'm listening to right now, which is really interesting, but I'm late to the game on it because not a lot of people have already read it, is Atomic Habits.
Yes, great book.
Really cool book. I mean, great way of thinking about it and breaking it down in really simple terms. So those are 3 that I would absolutely recommend.
Awesome. I've read Atomic Habits. The other 2 I haven't read, so I'll have to check those out. Atomic Habits is great, going back to your advice of that consistency and staying focused and doing the right things consistently is huge, especially in farming and real estate as a whole. So that's awesome. So
the idea of goals, I just want to say, the way that he thinks about that is you can get really overwhelmed. And in this business, it's all about GCI and units sold and all that. And it can be really overwhelming, even for people that have been in it for 10 years, because you're always looking at the step ahead of you, right? I mean, I'm, not to touch on any companies or anything, but because I'm in a relationship with a lot of different people in my company, I'm in a relationship with people that are doing over 1,000 deals a year. 1,000 deals a year. I can't even fathom, the organizational bandwidth that takes. So goals can be very overwhelming, and this book breaks it down to the point of, don't think about the goal, think about the person, the type of person that it takes to live at that level, and start thinking, making decisions based on, would that type of person do this or do this behavior? And it's a much easier way to break things down, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. So our last segment is just how can people check out what you're up to, connect with you, and find out more about you and the show that you're running.
Well, y'all heard about my TikTok history, so don't go there. Definitely YouTube is the place to find me. You can check out, we've got a group corresponding on Facebook, but it's mostly me just posting the videos. So just go check it out on YouTube, The Real Estate Agent Advantage. I love talking to other agents. I love getting insights from successes and failures, no matter what level of business you're at. I would love if you reached out to me. My number is 416-890-5775. I will forever pump your program because I think it's fantastic for anybody really considering geographic farming at any level. Definitely check out Ryan's program because you don't even have to do all of it, because all of it, like I said, can be a lot. Take on the core elements and start to add other things as it grows, and you will be so far ahead. It's fantastic. So awesome. I wanted to give you that little bit of praise.
Thank you. Well. So yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. We'll put the book in the show notes. We'll put the link to my episode as well on your show in the show notes as well, so people can check that out. And so and
put the song in the show notes too.
I'll have to take the clip of that for sure, and we'll make that my new intro. So I really appreciate you being on here, Lorne. It's always great to chat with you, online, offline, in person, and it's always great at brainstorming. Again, like you said, you were one of those original beta testers who helped me create the boot camp and go through it. So it's awesome to see you implementing things and watching you grow in your business as well. So I appreciate you sharing that with our audience. I know they're getting a lot out of this, and I know they'll enjoy the song as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Ryan. I really appreciate it. I had a good time.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.